Did Virginia Tech just expose Miami for who they are, or was that the Hurricanes' wake-up call?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. On this loaded episode of Locked On Canes, we'll talk about what's becoming like the friendliest hate week ever, the Calgorithm versus the Canes fam. And we'll talk about what to expect from the Cal Golden Bears, who are coming off a bye week this week, so they're going to be very well rested. We'll talk about Cam Ward, the magic on the field, his stock. He's no longer the favorite to win the Heisman, by the way, but guys, we still have a lot to get into. When Miami coaches talked about it in their Monday press conferences about, the things that didn't go right against the Virginia Tech Hokies, despite Miami pulling out that win, joined by a very good friend of mine, very good friend of the show, Rudy Tamarchio is with us. So, Rudy, I want to read you this question that we got from one of our Locked On Canes insiders who goes by Steve. Well, I think his name is Steve.
Our friend
I was about to, he goes by Steve because his name is Steve. Steve from Port Orange says, question, do you think as a team we're getting better? More penalties each week, more turnovers each week, and this last week was the team's worst overall performance. So, Rudy, is Miami getting worse, or was that a wake-up call?
It's a wake-up call. It's not that the team's getting worse because, frankly, throw the ACC opener out of the window because I think the general collective feeling going into the game for at least my section of the stadium was – let's see, this is Cam Ward and some of the guys' first experience with true ACC insanity in terms of officiating and how the games are just kind of thrown out there. They learned real quick, baptism by fire, that it's just a roller coaster of a game. So they pursued it. Look, they pulled it out. That's all that matters. And I don't think it has anything to do with being a drop off. The same mistakes that were there in week one were also being made in this game against Virginia Tech. Yeah.
And another part of my answer to Steve's question would be that improvement doesn't necessarily happen in a straight line. Like you have to look at it like the stock market, right? I mean, over the course of a 3-month period, the market could go way up, but every year going to have some pullbacks. Some of the stocks are going to drop back before they go back up. People were laughing at me a little bit, Rudy, for doing an episode last week saying that Virginia Tech would be Miami's toughest test yet because they're like, oh, that team lost to Vanderbilt. They're 2-2. They were absolutely Miami's toughest test yet, and the Hurricanes played their worst game of the season. Virginia Tech played their best game of the season, and Miami was able to come away with a victory despite turning it over 3 times and missing 20 tackles in the game. We'll talk more about that, but improvement doesn't always happen in a straight line right upwards.
Look, Miami fans are just as guilty as everybody else in the country of having this "what have you done for me lately" syndrome. And when it comes to Virginia Tech, I think people forget that's a rivalry game for Miami, and it's a rivalry game for Virginia Tech. Even though ACC scheduling doesn't necessarily have us playing every single year, that's a team that's always hated Miami. That's a team that Miami always has to get up and play against because majority of the time those games are always very close. I know you guys talked about, by the way, Bruce Warner was on a Monday. I'm on a Tuesday now. It feels like that Ghostbusters, cats and dogs living together, total insanity. I'm like, what happened there? Anyway, you guys talk about Boston College and that 2001 national championship team and how they had to get through that test. Don't forget that at Blacksburg, Virginia Tech dropped a wide open 2-point conversion to send that game in overtime too. So it doesn't matter what year it is. Virginia Tech's always going to play Miami close. And look, we're frankly fortunate to come out of that with a win because we didn't play our best in any facet of the game, except for special teams. I think that was the one place where they clicked.
Yeah, and so some important factors for this game at Cal. Well, we could talk about what Miami's doing to adapt to the travel. It's actually the first time they're leaving the state of Florida so far this season, and you also throw the time change into it at a very late start time. It'll be 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. Mario Cristobal mentioned yesterday that throughout the week, they're gradually going to be starting their team functions 60 to 90 minutes later than they normally would to kind of ramp it up to account for the time change. They're traveling out to Cal on Thursday. They usually don't travel till Fridays, so they're getting out there a day early. And, a couple of things that I would look at as statistical aberrations from that game. I mentioned 20 missed tackles, which kind of reminded us of like 2021 or 2022. I don't expect that to happen again. Lance Guidry said, Miami's defensive coordinator, it's all teachable moments, which is good. The guys played hard, and I never saw the sideline panic. I never saw it in their eyes. They thought they could win all the way to the end. We didn't play as great as we needed to, but I'm not going to apologize for a win. We got the thing done. Last year, we played against Georgia Tech, and I think we played really good on defense until the last drive, and we lost. I will take this win over that one, which was not a win, any day, Guidry said. And then also, Rudy, you could talk about that, but also I want to mention that something I don't expect to happen again this year was Kiko Maui-Noa was Miami's lowest graded, not just defender, lowest graded player on the field this past week at a 44.9 Pro Football Focus grade, and Kiko was missing tackles left and right. I do not expect that to ever happen again.
Yeah, I think part of that performance from Kiko was just also just a little bit of the discombobulation of the defense, because the one thing, at least when we were watching, is that the same mistakes that happened, like that one big run against Florida where there just wasn't any gap integrity and setting the edge. That's exactly what happened against Virginia Tech a few times, because they kept running it from sideline to sideline. You're watching it going, just keep contained. And I think some of the missed tackles on Kiko's part is just that if somebody's not shooting their gap, he's going to be out of position now because he's trying to accommodate for somebody else. Except for that one long touchdown run by Tootin where he just kind of got flattened on that one play. Hey, it happens, everybody, once in a while, and Tootin's a good player, so it makes total sense. I don't expect that to happen again. If anything, it almost felt like both sides of the ball, offensive and defensively, we were both kind of forcing the issue a little too much when they just need to let the play come to them, let the game come to them. Similar to what they did in the first half against USF, where it's like, just don't give in to the desperation. Virginia Tech was playing with a little bit more desperation in the sense of their speed of the game. They weren't obviously running as fast as South Florida was trying to do, but they were keeping the same personnel on the field when they had successful plays. They were running a little bit slower, but they're just trying to do a lot of the same, like misdirection and motion. And if you're not holding integrity, and if you're not being, what's the word I'm looking for? Fundamentally sound, that's going to affect you every single time. So I don't expect that to happen, 2 weeks in a row. That's more of an anomaly than a lack of preparation. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And the other thing, when I hear that quote, and Shannon Dawson said something similar, talking about how, there was no panic. They always thought they could win the game all the way until the end. That's a game that probably any Miami team over the past decade plus, they don't win that game, right? I will say that especially confidently because, in the last, I don't know how many years, we haven't had a quarterback like Cam Ward, because if Cam Ward doesn't pull off the magic tricks that he pulled off, especially on that final touchdown drive, not to mention the effort play from Elijah Arroyo to track down that would-be pick six and make that tackle, and they ended up coming away with no points on that after the interception. That effort play, if that doesn't happen, and if you don't have a guy like Ward who's able to make that crazy play that he made on the toss to Riley Williams where he was able to escape from 2 sacks, you don't win that game. Yeah, you don't win that game. And it's something that you don't have to believe the coaches by saying they never saw any panic on the sideline. I think anyone who was at the game can also just watch the player, body language in between plays. Nobody was getting too up. Nobody was getting too down. It's one of those where they were locked in, and that's exactly what they needed to use to win the game. Because, Cam made a couple mistakes. I think even in the exact moment, now that they have the iPads on the field, they know exactly, I missed a read here, I missed a read there. That's not too big of a deal. I mean, I think the collective PTSD of Miami fans is that once you start seeing a few different turnovers happen, it's like, oh my God, he's forgotten how to throw the ball. He doesn't know where he's going to go. It's just going to be another turnover and another turnover. And if you look at Cam, he didn't flinch. He made one was a bad throw. One was just he just needed to look off the guy a little bit longer. And hey, that play that he made to oh my God, I forgot his name now, the tight end, the one where, the one that I have behind me, that he just evades 2 tacklers, pitches it out.
Arroyo.
No.
No.
88.
To Riley Williams. Oh, I
Riley
see. Yeah,
Williams.
that's the one I
Yeah.
referenced earlier. Yeah.
It just shows you right there. Like he's so locked in, and the communication that they had where he was sharing in the post-game press conference too, of saying, look, I don't need to have, Miami runs max protect a lot and they're letting the back sit there and block. But what he was saying is in a couple of these situations to the receivers specifically, don't block. I'll get a guy out of the way. I just need you to make yourself available. I'm going to get you the ball. So in that case, he did exactly what he said he was going to be doing. There's no panic. It's something that he already has in his DNA. And that's the difference for Miami winning. And the other thing is, Miami doesn't win that game for the past 20 years with different squads. Also, they may not come back as quickly as this team does, because as much as either you win or lose that game, the next one ends up becoming more of a roller coaster. I think that'll be the test to see this week too. Do they really come out, guns blazing against Cal?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about the matchups with Cal. I also want to talk a little bit more about Cam Ward. This is the best quarterback Miami has had since, and I think Rudy's a good person to help me with that, because he's really a Miami Hurricanes historian. So you want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. My friends, I am only getting started with 5 Hour Energy, and this is, especially during football season, a shot of 5 Hour is my best friend, because I love to stay up late for the primetime games, as I did last night to watch the Miami Dolphins lose. I don't know why I punished myself like that, but I did. But the 5 Hour Energy is what got me through this morning. This is why I have so much pep in my step, with 0 sugar and a convenient portable size. It's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. 5 Hour Energy is the brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling they need to get through a busy, hectic day. You always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots, right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid till September 30th on one order, cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure for your next listen, you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I take you through the conference, the good, the bad, the ugly, every single week and every single day. Locked On ACC is also available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're talking Miami Hurricanes here on Locked On Canes with Rudy Tamarchio, who's a former Sebastian the Ibis, by the way. I always give my pal a shout out for that. So, Rudy, and we'll talk about some of the incredible numbers that Cam Ward has been putting up this year. He continues to lead the nation in touchdowns, for example. You've seen a lot of Miami quarterbacks over the years, some very good, some not so good. Cam Ward, he's the best quarterback Miami has had. Is it since Dorsey? He's probably more talented than Dorsey? Like, you have to go back to Vinny Testaverde. Like, when's the last time Miami had a quarterback this talented?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of having all the intangibles, he has the escapability of like a George Myra and a Vinny Testaverde, and even Gino Torretta to an extent. But in terms of the comparisons to Dorsey, it's really in the cerebrals. It's all in just how he's able to identify a defense. And I don't think there's been an offensive coordinator, an offensive system that's allowed the quarterback as much freedom at the line of scrimmage as they have with Cam Ward since Ken Dorsey. I think a lot of maybe Ja'Cory Harris for like a little bit of time there, even though he went through, I don't know, 2-3 offensive coordinators in his time at Miami, but he was a guy that always kind of just knew like where the defense was going, whether the protection was there or not is, left to be desired. I know you've had Ja'Cory on the show and you've had him on the postgame show at 560 a few times, so I'm sure he could speak to it, but he was always somebody that was, well scouted in terms of knowing what the defense was going to do. It's just a matter of, did he have enough time to deliver the throw or if the throw is accurate? But yeah, Cam's the total package.
Here's some Ward stats courtesy of our friend Gio Milian, who compiled these. Cam Ward, through 5 games as a Miami Hurricane, he's responsible for 122 points. That's number 1 in the country. 18 passing touchdowns, number 1 in the country. 1,782 passing yards. That's second in America. quarterback rating of 92.7. That's second in the country. Pass efficiency of 195.09. That's fourth in the country. 11.07 pass yards per attempt. That's fourth in the country. 15.77 pass yards per completion. That's fifth in America. And, Rudy Ward, for what it's worth, he's still up there near the top of the Heisman Trophy odds. His odds dropped a little bit to plus 500. And I still thought Ward, he improved his stock in that Virginia Tech game. However, he didn't improve his stock as much as Jalen Milroe did. So Jalen Milroe, in beating Georgia, he shot to now the top of the list at plus 200. Ward is plus 500. And Travis Hunter, like they don't usually give that reward to non-quarterbacks, but Travis Hunter, dynamic two-way player at Colorado, has shot up to third at plus 600.
I think the thing that affects both Cam and Travis Hunter is just the level of competition, because Jalen Milroe's always had the brightest spotlight in terms of, okay, he did it against the number one team in the country in Georgia. I would argue that his freshman wide receiver probably increased his stock in that game as much as Jalen Milroe did, because the catches that he was making in that fourth quarter was insane. But no, I think if you look at the Heisman rankings from week to week, it's always going to be a little bit of drama, and every single Heisman candidate, they're not going to blow everybody out. They're not going to put up incredible numbers every single game. Granted, Cam put up some great numbers against Virginia Tech, but he also faced adversity. And I don't think there's a guy that's been hit and had some early mistakes like he did in that game that's bounced back as effectively as Cam to be, he's the guy that won Miami the game at the end of the day. So in terms of just pure, measuring the measurables of saying, is he the most valuable player in college football? Look at what he's done for Miami. Look at where Miami was a year ago, and look at where Miami might be without him this year. And I think without a doubt, Cam Ward's number one on that list.
Things that could give Miami a hopeful potential boost this week against Cal. People still don't believe him because Mario Cristobal is not always the most reliable source of injury information for his own team. He did say in no uncertain terms that Rueben Bain is back this week. Like he said he's back. He's a go this week, especially since Miami, it sounds like they're unlikely to have Elijah Alston this week, who got banged up last week. That was one where Cristobal hinted he's going to need more time. I think everyone else who left the game on the D-line is probably back this week except for Alston. And then you can add Rueben Bain, who hasn't played since the first defensive possession of the first game. And then on the offensive side of the football, Rudy, I will say Miami's O-line has done an admirable job in pass protection. They've been shockingly inadequate as run blocking unit if you go by the grades, of course. But Jalen Rivers was described by Cristobal as a game time decision this week. So Miami seems to be getting the boost from Bain coming back, but how badly could we use Jalen Rivers back this week?
I think he'd be great in terms of just it'll change how defenses try to, attack Cam Ward specifically, because they were trying to exploit Markel Bell over on the left side. Yeah. And granted, I think being called for like a phantom holding penalty is going to get in your head a little bit and say, okay, well, if I'm using technique and you're flagging me for it, what else am I going to be doing that you might flag me for? So I'm sure I think that's more of a knock on just how the game was kind of being dictated. Because if you look at this, like I know you and Bruce spoke about it, you talked about it in the post-game show as well, but if it wasn't for that call, Miami's up 21-7 and they're off to the races. So I think you have a different game in terms of how things are being called. And I'll even make a counter argument about how Miami's been running the ball, because I think some of the adjustments that Miami made at halftime wasn't so much that the offensive line just all of a sudden got some more mojo. I think it's that they stopped trying to force the ball down the field, because defensively, Virginia Tech was doing a good job of sitting on very, very short routes and just bringing numbers. So if you're run blitzing, you're not going to be that effective. And I think they learned later on in the game, like, hey, the personnel that we need to be effective running the ball against this team is adding more speed versus power, because they're having so many people inside. So when you saw Chris Johnson come in and Jordan Lyle come in, they had a little bit more success with the ball. But in short yardage situations where they needed to run it, they've done it. They didn't really get stuffed that many times. It's just that it's not sexy to watch, a 4-yard run from Damian Martinez or a 5-yard run from Mark Fletcher. So I would say that they're doing a better job. It's just a matter of they're not. I think if you're up 21-7, you would have seen more running from Miami because they would have been able to kill some more clock and lean on them. But the way the game kind of played out just affected the play calling.
Before we go on to the Cal Golden Bears, I do want to ask you your opinion on the final play. Catch, not a catch, review process, because the thing that I feel like I'm getting dumber this week by watching these hot takes on TV where people keep saying like, yeah, I think they got the call right, but they shouldn't have taken that long. They should have just ruled it a catch because they took too long, or maybe they didn't have enough evidence to overturn it, even though I thought it wasn't a catch. I keep people saying that. It's like, I'm at a loss with the way that this is being broken down.
Yeah, I mean, the confirmation bias is just incredibly stupid. And I think everyone's looking at the CBS Sports replay where it had like Rick Neuheisel and like that one guy from Notre Dame with the bushy eyebrows talking about how that's working. And I think the thing that drives me crazy more than anything else, like, yeah, it's one thing to be a Virginia Tech fan and think, oh, you got screwed out of it because they called it a touchdown on the field to go to replay.
Yeah.
Look, that play happened right next to where I was. And granted, I couldn't see the ball because I'm on the backside of the play. All you see are just arms rushing for a loose ball the whole time. Everyone's out of bounds. The whole mass of humanity is out of bounds. So the fact that they call this on the field to touchdown to begin with was dumb. I don't think it can be said enough that two of like the three wildest, screwiest endings in Miami history happens to have the same team of officials on the field. The 8 lateral Duke game from 8 years ago versus this. There's a reason for that. But to talk about the CBS guys and why it took so long, the narrative there that drove me crazy was when they said, well, if it's taking that long to review, it usually gets upheld. And that's the polar opposite of what's actually done. The longer it takes, the more okay, they're overturning the call. They want to see what time is left on the field. What's the spot of the ball? Where did this happen? The longer it takes, the more likely it's overturned, not the more likely it stands. If it stands, because you look at it for 2 seconds. And the other thing that we talked about off air that I think we need to address is because it's that same crew from the Duke game, who says they were trying to determine the call for 6 minutes? Maybe they determined the call for 2, and the ACC office is just saying, guys, stop making us look stupid. Everyone already knows that we suck at officiating. Everyone already knows that now we have to make the play. We have to make the call up here. So now we have to put you guys in a bad spot. Just go out there, say it quickly. We'll release a statement and get the hell out. So
yeah, pretty much.
Who's to say that didn't happen in 6 minutes?
I like that. Well, we have one of the more interesting hate weeks coming up because the Cal fans, they're almost too nice. I mean, you contrast the Cal fans, they call them the Calgorithm, compared to those weird USF guys from a couple weeks ago. I don't know what to do with myself this week. You, my friends, you want to keep it locked right here. We got Rudy Tamarchio with us. We're not nearly done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, Miami, they're double-digit favorites this week. Now, you may be cautious after, the way that Virginia Tech played out to see Miami minus 12.5 this week, whichever way you want to go. You got Miami covering the spread, bouncing back. You think they're going to struggle in a late-night game against a very well-rested team. Whichever way you want to go, you can find all the action at FanDuel Sportsbook. And hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. For your next listen, you can also check out Locked On College Football. I've been making a lot of appearances on that show with Spencer McLaughlin this year because, Miami's been winning or there's been controversy. So make sure you check out Locked On College Football. It's available free wherever you get your podcasts. And much like this show, it's also available free on YouTube. So Rudy Tamarchio, here's an illustration of the sort of social media banter that we're getting this week. Miami fans have made this. But yeah, they call him the Calgorithm. Let me hold on. This is from the user called Admiral Bear. Miami hate week begins. Hate in quotes. This hate week will be notable for mutual respect and appreciation shown by our fans. Miami fans have made this awkward by being so damn cool. Thanks a lot for ruining hate week, Miami. I'm sure hosting you this weekend will be delightful and fun. And then you have, it's not Catholics versus convicts. Some people have been calling it communists versus convicts. Others are calling it woke versus Coke.
I honestly, these guys are the best. They're the absolute best. Him, and then there's another guy on Twitter, Timbo Slice, who have been coming up with some artificial intelligence like aided artwork and stuff. And the funny thing is, apparently their AI doesn't really work that well in terms of finding an ibis. I mean, that's more toucan than ibis in terms of the beak. Much better usage of AI by the Cal fans than the USF bots that we're just using it to try to use like Chat GPT to talk a bunch of smack for no reason. No, Cal does it the right way. And they've been doing this all season long because, I don't know if you touched on it earlier this season, but when they played Florida State, they started calling it Woke Campbell Stadium. And now I don't think I'll ever call it by any other name because it's just that funny. And I think part of it was just they were kind of shocked by the feedback of Miami fans. Some of the artwork that has like, hey, it's Miami players get off a plane, and it's the Cal Bear there with like a book that says critical race theory on it. It goes, hey, some of our fans are okay with inclusion that way. Remember, we're the first ones to integrate in college football back in the 60s.
That's right.
They're sitting there going, oh, so you guys aren't Florida Man. Like, no, Miami Man is a totally different character altogether. I think they call them Superman, the defender of Hialeah. So yeah, I think it's been kind of a shock for them on that front too, but absolutely hysterical and a lot better taste in my mouth going into this game than the last time we played Cal, which happened to be the last time we played in the state of California, which also happened to be my last game in an Ibis costume.
Really? That was the Emerald Bowl?
Yeah, with Javid Best just running and running and running. And I think I'm trying to remember like Kareem Brown and maybe one of the guys still being held at this point. Actually, no, I think Kareem was already gone by then, but like Marcus Forston was playing as a freshman that year. I think he's still being held. That's how painful that game was. We had to split the sideline because it's where the San Francisco Giants play. I don't know what it's called now. I think it was AT&T then. And because the field level on the other side is where like the backstop and all that stuff is, you're essentially playing in the outfield. All of those seats are below field level. So to keep them from being obstructed, they had both teams share the same sideline.
Wow.
It was
wild.
Odd. It was really odd.
We're not going to see Javid Best in this matchup, but we're probably going to see the healthiest version of Jaden Ott all season. He hasn't broken out yet this year, but he's also been playing banged up. And since Cal's coming off the bye week, you would probably figure Ott is going to be a better version of himself. Their quarterback Fernando Mendoza he's not lighting up the stat sheet, but he's been very efficient. He's completing about 67% of his passes, and Lance Guidry was talking yesterday about how like he throws the back shoulder stuff really accurately. And also with Fernando Mendoza, he's going to be extra motivated. He's a Miami Columbus for South Florida kid. Mario Cristobal knows his family, so he's going to want to put on a show against the team from his hometown.
Yeah, I think they manufactured a little bit of controversy by trying to say, oh, he never got a look at by Miami. They don't even know he's from their backyard. Like, look, Mario Cristobal pretty much knows every single child that comes out of Columbus, whether they play football or not. Same with Alex Mirabal, because he's been connected to that school for upwards of 40 years. So I don't think that's to be said. Of course, he'll be motivated. He'll want to play. He probably grew up a Miami fan too, but definitely some interesting pieces. I think something that nobody talks about when it comes to Cal is this will be Miami's first real taste of fall as well, because with such a late kickoff in Northern California, expect that to like start probably in like the mid 50s and maybe be down to the low 50s towards the end of that game. Granted, it's not like it's a 30-degree, Boston College game, but it's just something to note. So it's great that they're showing up a day early, getting themselves acclimated to the weather and to the altitude and all the other stuff. Just better to not have your body be asleep to play the game.
And this is a game where, again, Miami they were careless with the football last week, 3 turnovers. You got to clean that up because Cal has been opportunistic with that. They're 7th in the country in turnovers gained at 11 on the year, and they're 3rd in the country in turnover margin. So they've taken care of the football. They have forced timely turnovers. So this is one where, if you have another 2 interceptions and a fumble, I don't know if you can recover in this one as easily as you did last week.
Yeah, I think the big problem too is that those interceptions were returned for such a long way. So it wasn't even like you had the defense to get you much of a chance. And also fighting some of the injuries in the secondary with like Jaden Davis went down. He didn't play the entire second half. So you were seeing, oh my God, I forgot his name too. Zaquan Patterson and a few others that were in there. Zaquan did a lot better on some of the man coverage pieces where they just had him on the running back. So he's running around like a maniac trying to get there. I think the matchup too is just a little bit more favorable for Miami, because something about that Virginia Tech team, they run kind of the same style of offense as a lot of the other traditional ACC teams do, where it's like there's 2 tight ends that sneak out, there's a really good running back, there's a running quarterback, it's wheel routes, shallow crosses, and like a streak. And for some reason, Miami just had problems with that. And it's the same, regardless of whether it's Frank Beamer or it was Justin Fuente or now it's, Brent Pry. It's the same Virginia Tech offense for nearly 30 years. So it's just one of those where we happen to catch them on the bad day, and bad day for us. But yeah.
No doubt. Well, good stuff here as always from Rudy Tamarchio. Make sure you follow him on X at Rudy Tamarchio. Make sure you follow us at Locked On Canes. Rudy, thank you so much for taking the time, man. We'll catch up soon.
We need a counter for 5-hour energies that you're going to be consuming over the course of that game and post game, because I'm sure it's going to be a marathon.
I don't even know what time they're doing post game until they haven't released the schedule yet. Because I do post game on radio, which is a multiple hour thing. If people don't know, it might go till 5 a.m. If that goes till 5 a.m., I might call in sick. I'm a game time decision like Jalen Rivers for post game.
That's a good call, especially with just don't play the game. We were going to have a 5-hour energy every time that the broadcast crew references the Virginia Tech game during this one.
Oh, man.
If you do that, you'll be wired until.
I'm going to fly. I'm literally going to be like, I'm going to rise through my ceiling. It's going to be crazy.
You're going to start seeing the algorithm.
Yeah. We appreciate everyone taking the time. By the way, speaking of the algorithm, on Thursday's episode, for anyone who watches Locked On ACC, you've seen this guy before. You probably love him because he's a tremendous guest. But Lawrence Ross, who's an author, Cal alumnus, and Cal super fan, is going to be joining us. He's been on CNN before, not talking Cal football. So he goes from CNN to Locked On Canes, and I appreciate him making that smooth transition. He's joined us on Locked On ACC before. I'm going to have Lawrence Ross because he knows Cal football up and down. He's going to join me on Thursday to help break it down. We'll talk to you guys then on another we'll talk to you Wednesday first, and then again on Thursday on more episodes of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.